All right. We are here at the January 26th meeting of the Orono Town Council Finance Committee. We have all council members here, Sarah Marks and Andrea Hardison, and then members of the fire department as well, and Clint DeShane.
Zach's online.
And Zach also is here on Zoom. So, with that, let's jump into the safer data. I assume that's why you
Yep.
gentlemen are here.
Yep.
All right.
So here's. You probably go this way. Oh, yes. Jake,
So where do we want to start?
well, I think we could, so we've updated the spreadsheet for the data, on the whole calendar year of 2025. So what I would like, I guess, to do is maybe, kick it over to whether Tom or Brian's gonna lead the show on explaining what the data is that's on the spreadsheet and explaining how they came to it. And then I've got a question at the end, but let's get to the end and then I can ask the question and see what the committee. Yep.
Basically, or do you want to do it?
No, you put this thing together, so.
Basically on the top spreadsheet, top of the spreadsheet is the known vacancies. Those are vacations and stuff that we schedule ahead of time, that we know ahead of time. A month ahead of time, we call our scheduled overtime. So those are the total, 4 lines of them is the total hours that we have to fill. Then the next line is, if we were at 6, we would only have to fill that many hours of all those total hours for that month. And then, the difference is what we did, then the percentage, so that, like for January 25, it's 86% of the overtimes for that month would have been covered if we were at 6 staffing level. And then it just continues on, so that we have a year-end total on the right. For total hours of vacations and known trainings. The hours needing to be filled. And then the difference, and then the total end of the year percentage. The smaller box below that, is just a summary. Vacation and training. Then below the yellow is,
Oh, before you finish that, the projected,
projected. What I try to do is take the year, every year, try to see what we use for time and kind of see what is an educated guess for me of what we use, what we may use. And what I guessed this year was close, well, maybe 100 and a half off for hours, but it's projected so we can have something for budgeting, to be able to project every year. Then below that, because it does, the top ones do not take into account sick leave or what we have a short, if somebody calls in today, wants to take a vacation on Friday, short, we call this a short, we don't fill it by scheduling it, we fill it by off-going type stuff, unscheduled overtime. There's a different way we fill our overtimes, so, I did 2025 year to date, we used 1,602.5 hours of sick leave. It's a monthly average of 107 hours. And then I put underneath that total vacation hours that we use, so that the total overtime hours was 5,962. Then I took all those numbers and went down into the little cost savings estimate. I got from Zach the average overtime average payout, including all insurances, retirement, workers' comp. So that would have been 5,962 hours that we had, overtime we had, at times it by $57.51 per hour, was a total of 342,874.62. Unavoidable hours, if FD was at 6, we would only have to cover 615 hours minimum. So that turns out to be 35,368.65. So that would have been, if we were at 6, the maximum savings that we would have had for our budget would have been about $307,505.97. So it's kind of the reason behind doing the six per shift, and it is a cost savings.
So that's where, again, as we jump in just a little bit. So when we looked at this, the maximum savings, some of these things, we kind of changed some of the wording, but it is the maximum savings. Because that's the most we could achieve, because when you look at, even though we might have more time out, it's the maximum for the year that we're in. So a future year could have a higher maximum savings because people are using more time, but that's the, we can forecast, so I think it's good to use this as a good forecast. The one that I kind of been struggling with is, if you look at the spreadsheet, the minimum achievable situation appears to be 615 hours, that 35,000. Is that if everything were perfect, we only would use 615 hours. That's probably understating the best case scenario, meaning making it look better than it really ever could be. And so that's the one that I kind of like, because it's going to be subjective. So I put a few criteria, and this is the first run with all of you. So on the record for the whole world to hear. But I looked at the number of hours that we used for sick time used at the 1,600. And I looked at the 40, well, let's call it 4,400 of vacation used, but then I looked at the total overtime at 5,900. And I kind of came up with two, is that when you look at this, that 1/6 or 16% of the time.
What I just wrote.
You just did it.
I just did the same thing.
Yeah,
So I was
one-
laughing. I just did exactly the same.
So yeah, I got to the 1/6 number when I was working on this, which
Yeah.
was 16%. And the reason I got to that is because if you take 16,000 and divide it by 6,000, which is the total you use, 5,962.
Yeah.
It came up to that 16%. I'm like, okay, so what is that? So you take 16% of 6,000, and you get that 1,600 hours. And I'm like, okay, that might be the reasonable
Which
projection, because you gotta understand, you're going to people are, the sick time that are being called out have hours you're gonna double up with vacations. It could be all of them. It could be none of them, but it could be all of them, that every time a person calls out sick, we've always got people on vacation. And I got playing with the vacation hours, and your staff uses on average 66 hours each on vacation, because the 4,400 divided by 24. Problem is we also know that we weren't at 24 for the whole year. So I kind of went back, and these don't include, they do include the workers' comp longer ones, but depending on when that happens in a year, for a long time absence that's seen, if that happens in December, you're only gonna see a month of it for the year. If somebody goes out in January and has 7 months out, it's gonna show up at the end of the calendar year, so that number can fluctuate a lot. So I went back to the vacation, and I think we're pretty safe to say that 1/6 of the time, that sick time is gonna overlap. So 1,600 hours should be and it could go as high as 22. Because if 615 is guaranteed and there's another 1,600, you could say as much as 2,200 hours could be the worst case or most reasonable situation. But I like the 1,600 number because it's showing a little bit more real. So if you take the overtime rate, the 59, 57, 51, and multiply it by 1,600 hours, which is the one that I had done and I didn't bring it in.
1,600, Clint, just back up a minute, because there already was, 1,600 is all the sick leave hours. So that's actually the worst case scenario, it's where they all overlap. So what's most realistic is something halfway in between.
But they could all overlap.
Right, they
Because you
could.
got
So
600
that
more
gives us the
hours.
minimum savings and the maximum, and the reality is probably gonna be somewhere in between. So
Yeah.
the number you're about to give us is the minimum. I think. And then,
So,
yeah.
but the numbers that we're looking at, are these actual numbers or are these projected?
No, these are,
What if numbers?
They're
I track these every month, so at the end of the month, I go through and see, okay, here's what we had for scheduled vacation. This is what we had for unscheduled and sick.
Yep.
And that's how I do, at the end of every month, that's how I calculate.
So what I'm looking at is 2 years running, and I know we've had some unforeseen or what we would hope to be non-repetitive issues.
Yes.
They're 2 years running, so they've been repetitive for 2 years. So to use 1,600 as being that we have to call in extra overtime hours, because, and this is one of the ones I asked you to look into, Brian, is that how many overtime hours did we pay out in the year? And it's the 5,962.
That's
But what we're trying to say is that if we were at full staff, everybody was healthy, it's just normal sicknesses. A cold, you know, 1 week out because the son's getting surgery or something along those lines, but things that are, or daughter's getting surgery, or wife, or whoever it may be. If we use that 1,600 hours, it comes out to around $95,000.
Well, if we can get to full staffing and
Yeah.
yet having 16 people, so even if we have some, I would say.
Yeah.
It's not costing us the overtime as well as.
But what I'm thinking here is if we did a projection saying at staff estimate of saying that 1,600 hours could be, is what's the current trend that we're always, that we're seeing the sick hours as our maximum, as the non-fixable. Yeah, we can't, and you get to the minimum savings, you're still gonna save
$209.
$2,000.
So it's 209 at the least is what we would save. The maximum is 307.
Correct.
And I think in reality, we're likely to hit a number that's somewhere in between that. I mean, the other way to look at it, Clint, would be that if you take a look at what percentage here
Mhm.
that were, there was in the other numbers,
85, maybe.
right,
Yep.
85 and 15, right? It's the same number. So if you, I mean,
70% of all numbers. Yep.
right, so if only 15% of that 1,600 sick leave hours had to be covered, just like 15% had to be covered from the planned leave, right? That puts you at about like 290, 95, somewhere in there. My guess is the real number is halfway in between. We're somewhere between 250, I bet you, and 290 or
Yep.
two
But it could
fifty
be
to
as bad
300.
as 200.
Could be as bad as 200, could be as high as 307.
Because in
Right.
2024, our total number of total hours of vacancy were 7,310.
Yeah.
2024.
Yep.
And we needed to fill 1,812.
Yeah.
So that was 75%.
So what I think we should do is update the spreadsheet and kind of say that we
Yeah.
used a staff projection.
Yeah.
Taking in what we actually did and said we have to put a percentage to it. Since 1,600 is what we took, 1,600 divided by 6,000 gets me to that 16%. You multiply that 16% in there and then you get to that projectable, reasonable.
Projectable reasonable minimum savings is 209, maximum savings is probably about 307.
Yeah.
It'll likely.
But
fall
it gives you
where
a
it's in.
range instead of giving them a number. Because again, we don't want to make it look like we're overstating the value, but we also don't want to miss the fact there is guaranteed to be value at running at 6. Because we're not calling back in a lot of times till we get to below 5.
And there are some variables on that, a little bit on the fact that as we have young staff right now, so as they.
Get older and earn
get
more
old-
vacation.
So they earn more vacation time, and
Right,
theory would be that they might use a little bit more sick time.
Yeah.
If they're younger, and they have families,
Yeah.
staff, the families.
And as that gets bigger, as maximum savings grows, but our minimum savings would also grow, so we
Yeah,
would
it'll
get this.
also-
Yeah, so we're also gonna have this, we're not gonna be able to achieve as much, it's always gonna be more expensive at some point. But again, wage scales go up every year, so again, obviously the cost of staffing goes up.
And right now, most where we are short on
Yeah.
paramedics and officers, we have to have an officer and paramedics on duty every day, so. Unfortunately, if a medic is out, and our medics are all senior guys, so
Yep.
whatever, they have to fill those
Yeah.
vacancies.
yeah. I mean, first of all, this is just great. This is like the actual factual data, and I feel like it sets the council up really well to be able to go, okay, these positions are saving us somewhere between 209 and 307. I'm betting it's in the high 200s probably in the end, but wherever it is, it's somewhere in there. And then, then you look at that versus what it's gonna cost us to pick up the positions, which is about 400 to fund all four. We're currently
Correct.
funding one, which is around 100 per position with benefits, right? So we're already funding one, and if we pick up three more, it'll be about 400 to fund them, and they will in turn save us between 209 and 307.
Yep.
So what we're actually picking up is somewhere between just under 100 to just under 200, depending. And I think that puts us in a really good place to be able to say, that's the actual cost, to the taxpayer. And then we look at the benefits that are beyond the financial benefits, because I think those are really clear in your data too, right? In terms of, you have data on why people leave, right?
Yep.
And a lot of it is too much overtime, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, you talked a bit, although it's not in what you're presenting today, and I fully believe that that ties to mental health and all kinds of other issues, and I think those things are really important. So I think what's nice is we can then have a real discussion about, it is gonna cost us to pick up these safer positions, somewhere between, depends, but, somewhere between just under 100 to just under 200. And what we're getting for that value is hopefully better staff retention and better mental health. I was curious, this staff leaving numbers are happening even when we're supposed to be staffed at 6. So is your take on this, that this is because we really weren't staffed at 6 most of the time? Or are we feeling like even at 6, it's so many overtime hours?
No, I think it's.
We're not.
Get
Yes.
the 6.
Haven't been able to get
So-
to 6.
So if we,
That's why.
we could get there one time
Yeah.
since I've been chief,
Yeah.
so.
And again, the time we were there, and again, this is where you look at the data, and you look at the top, because May, June, 92%.
Yeah.
Covered by the 6th firefighter. And you're looking at it like, well, what's going on? Why are those better months? Because those are our planned vacation month. It's a high percentage because that's when vacation is.
Mhm. Yeah,
So we really, really scheduled tighter there. So we do see
Yeah.
improved
Yeah.
performance there. It's when the unscheduled ones kind of come in and creep up on us. And so like the worst month was February. And again, and that's,
Yeah.
winter time.
Yeah.
So, and again, it's also your shortest month and it's your worst.
Yeah.
So it just shows you
Yeah.
that because we didn't look at that on the number of days in the month, and it's still bad.
Yeah.
So it's even worse than bad. February's that struggles month. So I think we're onto it. I think there's a few other things. I'm glad you looked at the other sheets. I think this is it.
Yeah.
The other
Sure.
attachments. So I think if we update this one spreadsheet, I guess Jacob, Andrea, Sarah, are we good? Put this onto a council agenda, and I think it would be nice. I think if we did this as an action item,
Yeah.
affirming the decision. Obviously this year's budget,
We already
does have
funded
it.
through June.
it's already funded through June,
Yeah.
but just affirming that that the next budget will come forward with sustaining the program and keep rolling forward.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, and I think it's great because we've already done it through June, so we're covered. And then it sets us up for our budget discussions to know the budget you bring to us is, we assume that we're funding them and we know about what they're actually costing us. It isn't really the 400 that it's gonna look like. It's really gonna be closer to, like I said, somewhere like just under 100 to just under 200, depending where it falls in the.
And there's some other budget stuff that I'm not gonna get into today that I'm looking at with Tom, that's come up with some suggestions to look at potentials of what we could do to mitigate impacts somehow a little bit better, generate revenues from non-tax based sources, maybe even. So we'll keep you posted what we come up with. But Jacob, I'll kick it back at you if you're good. So,
Did you just say that we're sending to the council with this, we're not sending, I like these.
I send everything,
Yeah.
all
Okay,
four,
good.
and an
Me too.
updated
I
version.
thought I
of it.
misunderstood you,
No.
they're like, wait, why are we not sending the rest?
No, we'll send them everything.
It's updated on the drive now.
It is, we just gotta add we gotta add that's 1/6 number to
To
be
get the minimum
the
savings.
minimum savings 209-ish, whatever it may be, to the maximum savings of 307. But again, all of them are based upon estimates.
Yeah, and I think you need to put at the bottom of the same page, this is the savings and this is the cost.
Yeah.
Because what's not here right now is the cost of paying these positions, right? Because that could sound to someone on council who is not following it all the time, like, actually, it's not costing us anything. We're like, it is costing us.
Yeah.
It's just costing us half of what it might be because it's also saving all
Yeah.
this or slightly.
The safer, yep. The
Does that make sense?
unfunded,
Can we add cost?
unfunded cost, yep. We can do those.
So we're hoping that we ever do get
To sick.
too sick.
Yeah.
Our
The sick time will reduce.
We
So
should get
you're
back to
getting,
the-
you're getting that, the burnout.
Right.
with all this overtime.
Yeah.
It's work, so.
And then next year, maybe we actually hit 6 We actually see what actually happens at 6, and then we know, right? I mean, but this was really good projection based on actual figures and numbers, and it's totally terrific. So, thank you all.
We will get to 6. I don't.
And stay there.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
we're trying to build a cohesive team that I think that we'll get there. They'll spread the word that
Yeah.
that it is a good spot to be from
Yeah.
within themselves. I believe that'll help us get to that point.
And hopefully they'll feel supported by us continuing to fund these positions. They are. So,
I appreciate the build and non-build reports because I wonder about
which one are you on? Oh, the build and non-build for the calls, yeah. Mhm.
Eye-opening all the way around.
revenue service resources that we could be tapping into to cover the fuel costs.
When they're not billed, I'm assuming that's because they can't be billed? Why are they
Well,
not?
We have an ordinance.
Yeah, we could, there's ordinance opportunities to do things
Okay.
differently. We just, that's what staff's starting to dig into. How could we do this?
Hold on, we're last.
About how we might bill some
I
of
brought,
those.
I brought mine on it.
But we're not getting in.
Yeah,
We're not ready.
I'm not ready.
I'm not jumping in cold turkey to a conversation that's a week old. We got months to get a budget out to you guys and I'm gonna take it.
Thank
So,
you.
no, so,
Thank you so much.
and then. Okay, so review the saver. So, Jacob. I mean, you wanna just mention the quarterlies are there, but we're gonna roll them to the next month agenda with the council?
That's what I was gonna ask to make sure that's okay with everybody.
I thought they looked fine, Jacob, when I looked at them. I
Yeah.
left one on my screen that I had one question about, but I might have now closed it by mistake. Give me a second and see if it pops up. I mean, we're halfway through the year, right? This is July through December, so these should be the 50% numbers. And pretty much everything expense wise was right in that range, except of course, we always see the grant numbers are strange because we pay them all early to ourselves or don't get them. I mean, that Zach has explained that to us multiple times on the cash flow. There was one other that I looked at that I was curious about that wasn't like a grants or tips or reserves where we're kind of just moving money from account to account. But I don't know where it ended up.
Jacob, would you rather this show up,
Facilities.
or does the committee want this to show up as an action item the first time? Because we discussed eventually would just be consent counter going forward.
I mean, I'm fine being consent, and if somebody has a specific question, they can pull it. But
It might be nice, Jacob, just to do it as an action item the first time to just explain that this is the first time we're doing it.
Yep.
With these coming
Okay.
back. And then just explain and say from here on out, they're gonna show up on the consent agenda. And if you wanna pull them, just ask, but just
I need a memo.
say something about it, or a memo, yeah.
Okay.
I'll do a memo, give it to
Yeah.
you, Jacob, to confirm that just explains why we did it this time on action. And
Okay.
going forward, you can pull.
Yeah.
Yep, okay, I
And
can do.
expenses all look like 50% or under. Facilities just look really low, like only at 32. And I was curious if that's common on facilities.
There's been a few things going on there.
Yeah.
From a timing, I can look closer, but
It's okay.
I'd
It's
rather
not
wait till
worried.
you.
No, good, thanks.
Okay, so then the next one, Jacob. Yeah.
On the budget, just or on the financials, I asked this. So is there a way to develop again, I've asked this before, but a balance sheet equivalent? I mean, whatever it's referred to in municipal terms, our fund balance, basically something we can see our assets and liabilities. I think that's helpful.
Yep.
So just
you-
something that,
Yeah. It would just be
Okay.
staff created. That's the only thing we want to make sure everybody knows that. Yeah, let me toy with that with Zach and see what we can come up with.
and if it's too much, that's fine. I understand. Or maybe it's something we only do quarterly. It seems we should be able to get a sense as to what our balance sheet looks like. So
Yeah, I think we've got something similar we could use that might at least get us closer without a heavy lift on it, Clint. I've got a few ideas on that that we can touch base on at some point. I've been playing with some reports in Trio as I've been working with the auditors, and I've had a few ideas.
perfect.
Jacob, can I ask you a question? Because I looked at the page you gave us last time that was a sample kind of that. It was a little cut off on the right, so I couldn't see everything. But what is it that you're looking for that you think would change on a monthly basis? I do understand, or a quarterly basis, I do understand wanting to see it periodically, certainly at
Mhm.
budget season, like once a year. But I guess I'm curious, what is it you think is gonna vary that much on a monthly basis that would be relevant for a finance committee to be tracking?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, probably our liquidity metrics. So, as we start to, if we move to, actually bonding and spending down some of our reserves, we are going to get closer to that 16% or whatever the figure is. So I think it's important to look at our liquidity. And then I also think it's important to look at our leverage. And yes, it's not going to change, but if we're looking at it every single quarter, we've got it in the back of our mind that this is what our balance sheet looks like.
Yeah, the other one too is it would be helpful because I think we've talked about it in here is when we book our taxes, it shows as collected because we billed it. But we actually don't, we need to show you, we track on our own how much you've actually paid of the amount that we posted in there
Sure.
because it's due to us. Because when you look at if you look at revenues, taxes, general government revenue, year-to-date budget would have been 15 million. Year-to-date collected 16 million. And no, we haven't collected 16 million.
Yeah.
So we gotta figure, and that's just something that's governmental accounting can be a little awkward at times, but Zach and I'll work on that one. I got a few
Yeah,
ideas.
don't spend a lot of time or put a lot of work into it, but I mean, it's important. The income statement or statement of net position is really only half of the our financial package.
I will say the one thing that's on our goals for hopefully the near future, depending on how, things go, is to start having it at least a quarterly cash flow statement. I took a training on it. I've got a really good template. It's just kind of formatting it, fitting it into our schedule and making it work with Trio. So as we get closer with that too, that's probably something I'd bring to Clint and then maybe bring forward to you
Right.
guys to see if that kind of meets what you're looking
Exactly.
for, Jacob.
Yep. I never
Yeah,
want
we
to be in a
could-
position where we're concerned about that, but I also don't ever want to be surprised.
Agreed.
Well, we could also even get to that unaudited, unassigned fund balance projection. That we could actually take revenues less expenses of actuals and say, this is where we would, we started the year with 4 million. If we ended the year today, we'd have roughly 4.1 or 3.9.
Yep.
You can see where things are going. We can play with this. We got some ideas.
Okay, appreciate it.
So then you've
All
got,
right.
what do we, yeah.
Budget items. So last time we were tasked with some non-negotiables or things that really would like to see in the budget. I know that Sarah's got a list. I've got a couple that I've talked to Clint about. And so I don't. I'm open to how people want to do this, whether we just want to, say what we want to see or let Clint and Zach kind of talk about what the budget package is going to look like this year. I'll defer to the committee on that one or everybody on that one.
Well, why don't I take 2 minutes just to open up a little bit, Jacob? I mean, I'm meeting with all the council about budget objectives as a whole. It's part of my process to always just get one-on-one time with everybody to make sure I don't ever lose sight of what the town could also do. I mean, obviously, we're reviewing, I don't know, a large percentage of the time when I meet with you, it's things that are already on the goals and work with. So then outside of that, this is with the finance committee, I feel this is more of the information that gets presented to you. What can we do for improvements? And so I met with a few in the general staff goals that align with finance committee goals that I've heard so far. One, simplify. Two, definitely keep the cost center summary and the one-page tax rate calculation form. I was late last year with the tax rate calculation form, but full disclosure, I couldn't figure out what it was doing. It was doing things that were different than what I'd experienced in my career. And with working with a team and all the transition, we ended the year with one that I know I can replicate. So we're gonna start with that one being in there. So those were some of the big ones. And I think probably the other piece of this is, as we met with staff, is that, and I think it goes without saying, we've already done it. We did a retreat this year. So don't duplicate the retreat in here, but also don't forget what we learned in the retreat too. So, you know, and Sarah's done a great job giving some suggestions that I think align well with those three goals I think that we had on the staff side. And I think you and Andrea have shared a little bit as well as some ideas that we could work from too. I mean, it's always a learning process, but I think that's the big takeaways I had is to try to get it, create a portion of the budget that a person can understand what we're doing as a town really quickly and in pretty good detail, but without getting into line by line by line discussion. And then we just keep evolving it out to those other levels. I think historical data was disjointed last year.
It was all there, but it was scattered.
And so Sarah pointed out saying, can we compile it in one place? Maybe, let's give it a shot. Yeah, I think so.
I think it created more weeds than it did
Yeah.
clear pathways.
Yeah, but I mean, we were, what, 300 pages last year was the binder, I think, roughly?
Yeah, and the thing you and I looked at today is like 70 if we did it.
Yeah, 70 to 100,
Which would be
depending.
lovely, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know what, but I also don't want, I guess my question for the finance committee, I don't want anybody saying that this is an attempt to remove transparency. No way.
Right.
We are not reducing transparency. We are consolidating and organizing in a more efficient way, the same information.
Sometimes though, with more detail, you're getting, less transparency, and you've got somebody that's always saying, well, what about this, or what happens next? And that's not even part of the story that we're supposed to be looking at.
I really agree. I really liked what Jake, would you have something you want to say, or can I go now? What do you want to, did you want to go?
No, I did to Clint's point there. I would say from a transparency standpoint, I mean, everything exists. If somebody really wants to see it, but I think also to Andrea's point that it's more beneficial and more transparent if things are simplified. And
Yeah, I 100%
it's
agree.
much easier to understand.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I felt like
Yeah.
Clint and I met today, and you know, my things, and fits right in with Clint. My first thing was this page that I call it the maroon page because it had this big maroon header at the top that said municipal budget summary.
Yep.
And we never got it until close to the end of the process last year. And I
Mhm.
for legitimate reasons, but I think starting from this as the basis of everything this year will make a big difference at us being able to track changes also if council asks for changes.
Yeah.
And I talked to Clint about using this same template for the historical data, like the same first 2/3 of this page. If you turned it the other way on the page and tracked it across for 10 years, gives us actually almost every feet of historical data we need. Like in just, it'll be 2 pages long by the time you turn it, maybe 3, but that's it. It's everything instead of scattered in, 8 different places throughout the
Mhm.
binder, which I thought was a really productive discussion. Didn't you, Clint?
I loved it.
Yeah, I think it'll work.
I've already
So-
summarized our checklist into two and a half pages of
Yeah,
action items.
things we can
so.
do, yeah. So I feel really good about it. The other piece for me beyond this thing with the big maroon banner, Clint already touched on also, which is the cost center pages, which if you're looking at the old binder, they were page 14 and 15. And this is another case where I think if we improve page 14 and 15, we can eliminate like 30 other pages in the binder who had a little piece of information that if we just highlighted it in this comment section about, so the cost center to me should be a place where if, as a counselor, you've looked at the budget for this year, and then you want to know, okay, what's going up and down in each cost center? You can look at a cost center and see, okay, this cost center went up by 80,000, and then the comment box should tell me exactly why. It should highlight the big things, not the little things. And Clinton and I think this is a good finance committee discussion. Last year, we were getting things down to the $2,000 level change. I don't want to see those. I want to see the big changes that are driving that 80,000. So what was missing last year was FTE changes, because those make a big difference, and also salary and benefit changes, because COLAs happen every year and they need to happen every year. So making sure those are in the comment boxes with figures, and that the low, small things come out. Because I don't need, for me, I don't need to see them if they're under 10,000. I don't know what number exists for you guys, but I'm like, staff can pick a number, but 2,000 is way too small. I don't need to know that size change.
Are we moving a lot of things from capital to operating and operating to capital again? I think that minor things down a little bit too.
You know, we've got it to a place where I'm very comfy with that rule of minor capital, major capital. Things that are over the 20 grand range.
Yeah.
Should be in the operating budget, which we've got an operating budget now that covers it. So I think we're pretty solid there now. I mean, again, the flag that I made, and then this is something I learned with Sarah, is that, so say we set say it's 10,000 and above, we'll call out one by one by one. So you get all done and you look at all the major changes and say they add up to 50 grand. But then you're seeing a department that's up 100. We're gonna call out that there's 50,000 of additional changes spread out across multiple areas. It's then gonna be on the council if you wanna know about the 50. Because 50 would be a big number of incidental changes.
Right.
And so I don't want ever to not disclose that there's a lot of incidental changes, because, you know, well, we added 10% to every single line, you know, besides, well, you know, I'd wanna make sure you knew it. So that's the number I think I would call out saying, these all add up to 50, the department's up 100. The other 50 were incidentals.
Which is.
And again, I would find it highly unlikely you'd have that many incidentals, even in a big department like police or fire. But I'm not gonna say you wouldn't either.
Yeah.
So if it's getting that high, and again, when you look at that, what you're gonna see is pay, benefits, insurances, big changes. So when you're all said and done, you're probably gonna see something more like the department's up 100,000. There's 15 more of incidentals for a total of 115. And then the council's wanting to get into it, saying, well, where's your 15 incidentals? We need to shave 100. Do you think these incidentals could change? And I'll come back with answers.
Yeah.
That's where I think we'd start moving.
Yeah.
And again, we shouldn't see. I mean, the problem is you have some lines in a department of $500. And they come in and say, you know what, we need 750. Well, that's a $250 increase. It's a big percentage of that line, but it's really minuscule in the overall budget. So I like that idea. I think we'll probably start with, if you're okay with 10,000 this year, and see what it looks like.
Change it if you need to.
And if it needs to come down to 5,
Yeah.
we'll take a look that it maybe needs, or it might be 7,500, but I'll kind of look at that level. But
I would use your best judgment. I mean, $10,000 for one department for Parks and Rec is a big deal. $10,000 in the police department or fire department isn't. So, I mean, use your best judgment.
And then we still always try to call out, like, if we were gonna add something we've never done before, like we're gonna buy software, it's $7,000 for the software package. I'd probably call that out somewhere so you know we're adding it, but I don't know how. I gotta start building it and see how it takes shape. The big changes though, too, well, I'll stop there and then one add at the end.
Okay, no, I think that's great. Total discretion on your end, just to say that for me, the goal of that cost center page is, again, sort of like this summary page where you can get the basics.
Yep.
It's to get the basics on what's mostly driving the cost change. Not every single detail, because if we want every single detail, as you said, at the very least, you're gonna link to the entire trio budget.
Yeah.
And if we really, some individual counselor wants to know every single thing that happened on the fire department budget, we can read the whole trio report, right?
Yeah.
If someone really wants to go there, which I don't.
And that's, so Sarah said this and I agreed with her. The 109 pages, that's the trio budget, will not be in your binders. There will be a line in your binder that says, click here to go see it, and you can go look at it, but I'm not gonna print all 110 pages. And that same thing, the departmental budgets always have a resharing of the line item budgets in a reduced form. We're gonna rip those out too, because if we're gonna focus in one place, let's focus in the one place. If you wanna get to the minutia, go to the minutia. What we've gotta stop doing, which is what's been killing this process, is summarizing the same information 5 different ways.
Yeah,
And that doesn't work.
Yeah.
So, all right,
100% agree.
good.
I also, we talked about historical data coming together, which was important to me, and I spent some time to find all the pieces, and I met with Clint and said, here's every bit of historical data, and we could get it all into, these small number of pages, which I think would really help, and Clint's gonna double check everything I did. And then I also suggested to Clint that I would like to see us start perhaps the budget binder with some kind of reminders to council about what I might call like the council goals and sort of commitments and procedures right up front. Because we passed our own goals in December, and I feel like it's important that we look at those when we're doing a budget. They should be on the beginning to say, these were your goals as a council. So as you're building your budget, you should be holding yourselves accountable.
Yeah.
Are you actually making these goals move forward? And I also, we've talked about it here. We've talked about it at least twice at council that we ended up last year at the end of the budget process, getting to okay, there's these 4 big questions that we need to talk about at a council level, which were, what's the change in the operating budget? The proposed change, what's the proposed change in capital expenditures? What's that actually mean in a proposed tax impact to people? And then what is the reserve levels doing? Like, are we keeping them where they are? Are we drawing them down, as Jacob's saying? Are we thinking they need to grow? And I just want to put those 4 up front for council, because we said we would do that this year, that we would start with those 4 questions from our very first discussion and keep having them the whole way along and not spring it on staff later. Right, because that I don't think is fair to staff. Like, we need to do our job and have those conversations up front. Is that what you guys heard from our earlier conversations too at finance committee and
Yep.
council? Yeah. So that would be
That's
there. And then that page that Clint made, which is so great about impact on the homeowner, so that when you look at the budget, you know, every time council's talking about $100,000 is what it really means in your taxes. And the same for WPCF rate changes, which we committed to do as a council. The budget schedule, that is what we've agreed to as a council, that we voted on to follow that calendar of meetings. And then the only other thing I was thinking about in that place, you and I talked a bit about, Clint, I've been thinking about sort of not about this budget per se, but more about kind of, this is an overview, especially if you're newer to looking at the budgets as a counselor or a community member, of kind of the components of the budget. So like on the revenue side, there's 3 big sources of revenue. There's state rev share, there's what we tax people, and then there's everything else. And lately they've come in at about a third, although historically they were very different, years back. But that level of, like, if you're a new counselor, hey, heads up, when you're looking at revenue, there's kind of these 3 things. When you're looking at operating expenses, we were talking, Clint and I, some big picture stuff to highlight, like what % of operating expenses is salary and benefits, and what % is workman's comp, and what % is debt service, which would show you as a counselor right away coming in. Most of this is non-movable. Of those operating expenses, there's a lot that are quite fixed, right? And I think stuff we've learned, those of us who've been doing it for a few years, but when you're brand new, you don't know. So Clint and I talked about maybe some overview page to sort of help council understand each section: revenue side, operating expense side, capital expense, which also is, we have in our capital improvement plan, this sort of number that we should spend approximately every year to maintain what we have. And what % of that is also just roads, because it's like most of it. So like some big numbers like that, does that make sense to you guys? That would help council to just know, like, if you're not as into the weeds as some of us are.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that idea.
Okay, I think that's most of the things we talked about,
Yeah,
right?
it is. It's a great summary of all of it. And so if you're good, that's kind of where we're headed. I don't know what good luck updating the council, Jacob, during your chair's report. But,
Oh, I got this.
I think what you can say is it's gonna be really cool, like we improved so much.
It's gonna be better. Yeah.
We learned so much, and it's gonna be even better this year, and I think
Yeah.
we want lift to carry our budget binder.
Yeah.
Home and back and
Yeah.
forth. I might have to go to the gym.
Yeah. Yeah, as to the budget binder, Clint, I was gonna tell you that you can go ahead and print one for me, but last year I exclusively used the PDF and the add-ons that you did. So
actually, why don't I start that this year? We'll email out and say who wants hard copy and who's okay with electronic.
You can search the PDF. I know Sarah likes to write, and so some people like hard copies. I'm good with electronic.
But no, paper, just efficiency, good use of resources. If you don't want a paper, we won't give you one.
Yeah.
One of the things that Clint and I talked about is FTEs, because this comes up every year. So I request, and I would like to come to an agreement as to so in the budget binder, what FTE means, how it's calculated. And I guess those are the 2 big things, because we spend a lot of time, and yes, there are some discrepancies from historical data to current data, but there's also a lot of discussion about FTEs didn't actually go down, even though we moved this person from here to there. So I guess having a better understanding what the FTE data, how that's calculated and what exactly it means.
So we do have, and Sarah and I met on this. We do agree that last year ended.
It worked.
With FTE 1A and 1B.
Yep.
1B was the
Old data.
old data, and it's there, and we're not gonna spend a whole lot more time proving it. It's fairly accurate. And if somebody goes in and finds an error, good for you.
Yeah.
But what we did have is 3 years of extremely accurate data.
Yeah.
That we
Perfect.
do own, we can explain, and we're gonna add a 4th year to it this year.
Yeah.
So that's where 1A and 1B will be 2 documents. So we do have that. And Sarah did
Awesome.
also, that in the cost center summary, FTE up, FTE down, be in the general cost, be one of the bullets in that summary. And I'm like, yeah, that's not a bad spot for us to include it. So that again, you would have an entire expense budget. So if we came forward with a town manager's department, FTE +1, and it would say, we're adding a blank HR person. Not that that's on my mind, but wouldn't that be kind of cool?
I think, yeah, I think we're there, Jacob. Clint did a ton of work
Awesome.
last year to get the appendix, the A version, the more recent one, into a format that's really easy to maintain for Clint and really easy to understand for council. Because the biggest change was in the past, they used to split positions and show you this much was funded by the TIF and that much was over here.
Yeah.
So one person's job was shown in 4 different places. Sometimes it was kind of a nightmare. So that's all fixed. And what Clint talked about, I think the FTEs would show in the historical data. That's what we're talking about right now. These appendices show FTEs historically. But then any change for this year would show on that cost center page in the change boxes. And also probably on the 1 pager for each department.
Yep.
It would reiterate the same thing, like this is the FTE change and what it's for. And I think the only thing I would add is Clint and I also talked about the importance of being sure that each departmental page is also tracking contracted hours, not just FTEs. Because some departments, I think fire doesn't run contractors, so it's irrelevant. But like for central office, it could look like, oh, gee, we cut like 2 FTEs out from this many years ago, but we didn't. We just contracted that work out. And so it's really helpful to have a dollar amount on the contracted out, because we know that if the contracted out is 200,000, then that was probably 2 full FTEs that we
Yep.
contracted out, basically. So he's gonna add that in. Does that make sense, Jacob?
It does. Is that something easily
Yeah.
obtainable? So, I
We're
know we
gonna
do
add-
our own
we're not
internal
gonna
payroll, but
Yeah.
yeah,
It's not gonna
something
be on the FTEs because they aren't an FTE.
Nope, it'll be a separate thing. The FTEs are separate, and that will just show, again, on the cost center. If it used to be that you were contracting out 100,000 and this year you're contracting out 150, it will show contracted services up 50K, right? Does that make sense, Jacob?
Okay, yeah, okay. So it would flow through to Trio as contracted services, not necessarily, we yes, have a
We need-
payroll clerk that we retain for 5 hours a week, and then that has to be a manual calculation. So okay.
I think it'll be contracted services, and Clint was just gonna make a notation, like under contracted services, parentheses, whatever, town planner
Yep.
and, IT or whatever.
Yep.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yep, it does. Thank you.
It seems super well organized to me this year going in. I don't know how you guys feel, but I'm jazzed.
I agree. And so Clint, remind me or confirm for me that as far as the overall process this year, we as a council are going to have more say and input at the beginning of the process, as far as, because that has seemed to cause some issues at the end, is there's making changes at the end, as far as why are we spending this much on this line item, or my favorite, why are we
That's
buying
on you
this
guys.
many
You're gonna have to
trucks?
you gotta self-direct, but yes, last year we started getting more of it up front. We're gonna do more of it up front again, but with better data up front to
Awesome.
start off with. And that's the piece that was missing last year, and I couldn't fix it.
Yeah.
So I owned it for what it was and we dealt with it. But this year, and again, like one of the examples will be is you'll have a manager budget, and maybe it's a 2% increase, let's just say it, but then the council gets looking at it and says, Clint, we want it at 1. And I'm gonna say, okay, great. Just so you know, 2% is 100% staff and insurances. So if you want me to cut, do you want me to cut staff and insurances? Do you want to go to everything else? And you're like, well, go to everything else. Okay, well, if we go to everything else, there's only this much left over. So it could be, you could be asking for a 15% cut of everything that's left over, because the number is such a small percentage of what's remaining. And that's where I want to those conversations
Yeah.
going, is that
Yeah.
as we play the shuffling game, we gotta remember, we're shuffling shells that are of different
Sizes,
sizes.
which is why I really love the
Yeah.
intro idea of holding council accountable,
Mhm.
right? Very first pages, we promised to do this from
Yeah.
the start,
Mhm.
and then really shortening up where all this year's budget info is, so that as a counselor, you can be given this binder, and realistically, you should be able in a week to be pretty up to speed on everything that's relevant.
Oh, yeah.
Right, because there's not hundreds of pages to go through, and, so Jacob, I think with what Clint Scott proposed, if we hold ourselves as a council responsible to do what we said, to prioritize our goals and prioritize these big picture conversations from the start. And Clint takes the chance to do that page I was talking about sort of delineating for us. What is in the operating budget? So we get from the upfront, like which pots are really big that we can't really change much without getting rid of staff, which we're not likely to ever want to do, right? And which ones are much smaller. We start with all that big picture stuff, I think, right in front of us. It feels way like possible to me this year. Jacob, do you run these meetings, by the way, since they're finance, budget, like workshops led by the finance committee, or does Dan?
I always wondered about that, but then when Dan started doing it, I am not gonna question him. So
I mean, you might just want to talk to him about it, not
Yeah.
question him, but like, if you're more up to speed on, the financial stuff coming in, you guys might just want to talk about who facilitates, but either way, as a group, we need to hold ourselves accountable
Yes.
to do what we said.
Yeah.
And,
No.
it's on us.
I
Staff,
agree.
Give us great material.
He loves running meetings though. So, but yes, I'll talk to him.
All right.
But yeah.
So if you're good, I'm good. That was everything I had for this agenda.
Awesome.
On the financing, one more thing, you are gonna give us, right, as in your intro materials, all that stuff about here's what consumer price index did, and here's what the labor index did. So when we're looking, if it is a 2% increase, we're gonna have some context for that, right? That's gonna
Yeah,
tie
I think,
into
forget how I did it
inflation
last year.
and
If it needs to be added, I'll add it.
I think you had some of it last year, but just again, the more of that you give us up front, the easier you make those conversations, right? For
Do
not
we?
and say, how does this compare to consumer price index or what labor rates have done across the nation or whatever? Because it's all like there to start.
Do we have a subscription to like an Ibis World or Barron's or anything like that? Okay.
No, I've had Barron's in the past. That's one I've used in a couple other places, but no, we don't have one of those.
Okay. Because what Sarah's talking about is they spit something like that out by state. So
Yeah,
I'll do some digging. I can get some stuff.
but I think that will help too, to keep us focused on
Yeah.
where we're at. And I'm gosh hoping, how's everyone feeling about the state revenue sharing? Because this is the unknown thing, right? Like it can change everything depending on where it comes in, right?
Yeah.
When do we tend to get that number?
Our biggest issue is, so the revenues looks like it's pretty stable from prior years, and there's not an issue going on in that. The issue is gonna be more about how did our valuation change in comparison to everybody else? Our value, we seem to be on a different swing than everybody else. Our value is a couple, and so right now we're coming up when others are staying more stable. But that's because they came up quicker when we were staying more flat. So we're a little bit off on this, so we're gonna have to kind of watch it, but right now, good news though, is if our value's going up, that usually helps schools.
Right.
So there's what's that doing on their side, but right now, I would say right now, I'm hopeful that we come in flat. I mean, right now, county budget's what's,
The county budget is scary this year.
and I'm waiting on, they haven't even sent out the finalized numbers, and I'm wondering why, I'm figuring we'll be up 250 minimum. And that's just for that.
Do the towns have options of not contributing towards the person in the building and, I mean, do we have any option?
Not really. State law says that the counties can send us a bill, but there are some conversations happening in the state that not for this year, but maybe in the next couple of years, that it's time to start putting some stricter rules on how they present their budget, that they have to have certain measurables. One of the ones that keeps coming up is like contracted policing. If you're gonna contract out for policing, you have to follow these rules. It hasn't happened yet, but it may. One of the other ones that is being considered this year is that they have to go to referendum. I doubt that will pass based upon the referendum results of school votes, but I don't know. But there's a lot going on, but we'll see. There's also a lot of conversations about the bankruptcy components. And they can't file bankruptcy, but some of the counties are, in all intent and purposes, pretty much bankrupt. I don't have any money.
Yeah.
Which is, and Penobscot, I don't know if they're there, but they're definitely close because it's a huge increase to fix the hole, so to speak. Yeah, we'll get more on that as we come in, but again, that's.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting. Revenue sharing, we should have in about a month.
Yeah, so we should
Hopeful we'll
hopefully
see it.
have it. And I think it's important, like we also said when we did our bonding work as a council, right, to hold ourselves accountable, that if rev share came in especially high, that we would look at whether we could give some of that back to the taxpayers, because we're about to bond out, right? And not just say, oh, this is extra money to go spend where we want to spend it, right?
There's
If
also
we
a goal
didn't
to
say that.
sure.
I love your optimism, Sarah. I love your optimism.
I just think we need to remind ourselves that on the one, because it did happen for 4 straight years before you and I got on council, right? And the first 2
That's
years.
what I've been told of this mythical period of time.
It grew by $1 million a year for like 4 to
Yeah.
5 years. You can look back at the historical data.
Yeah, I gotta look at it.
And they didn't put that into reserves. And they very little gave that directly back to taxpayers, which may have been because they had to cut before, because I couldn't see the data from the previous 10 years. But we do need to hold ourselves accountable when that money comes. We have to look at whether we can give back something we had to take away on a previous year from folks, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, so we.
All right, 4:45.
Okay,
Thanks,
see you in
Jacob.
a minute.
All right, thanks. Bye.
Okay.